from where we stand today, it seems to me like the NBA season will be returning around mid-July. That's the information we have right now. Nothing's for certain, of course. Nothing ever is these days, but at the current pace and with the current plans, it looks like the NBA is looking to restart at Disney here in Orlando, Florida, and they're looking to return sometime in July. That's what we know right now. Very weird timeline that we're living in, and if you were listening to the podcast and everything that I was talking about when this all first went down, I used to be on the side of canceling the NBA season. I was leaning more towards that, and that was back in March, of course, with way less information, because at the time 7 months felt really far away. Of course, that would be the start of the 2021 season, and I was like, okay, if at any point we salvage this season, A, it is going to bump into next season and it's going to end up making that one look weird, and B, I didn't think the end of the season was going to look good, because you're gonna get, people are gonna be out of shape. Even if they have training camp, there's no way to get back to basketball that we had when people were pretty much in playoff form. So back then I was like, why would you also ruin the 2021 season for what is not going to be quality basketball? But of course, 2 months later, we're nearly in June, and from where I sit now, I can see that a lot of the same challenges that we're going to face with sports and basketball right now seem to be the same challenges that we're going to be facing throughout the 2021 season as well. So the 21 season is not going to be this perfect return to normalcy like I thought it was. At least right now, that's not what it looks like. And so I fully support what they're trying to do here. I just want some basketball back. That being said, I don't know why I hadn't talked about this yet. The potential for people to be putting asterisks on these championships, or well, this championship, because we don't know what next year looks like, but this one coming up, the 2020 NBA season. The 2020 NBA champion, LeBron's 4th ring. What if Boston got banner 18? What if the Clippers won their first title? No matter what bit of legacy we're talking about, it's going to happen under some very unprecedented conditions. And so for a while, ever since it seemed that the NBA has been pondering its return, that's what people have been talking about. Shaquille O'Neal came out with his own with his statement actually, and he said sort of what I felt back in March. And he was like, this championship is going to have an asterisk. It's not going to be quality basketball, so just pack up and get ready for next season. Of course, he said that like a month ago now, and again, new information. 2021 season is going to be challenging as well. But that is something interesting because, alright, I realize a lot of people don't remember the 2012 season. Every time I talk about the lockout or I bring up the lockout, I see comments and they're like, oh, what is a lockout? And I'm like, damn, there's actually people that weren't NBA fans back then, and they weren't there when we were having not back-to-backs, but back-to-back-to-backs, 3 games in 3 nights. And of course, even less people remember the 1999 NBA season, which was actually a worse lockout than the 2012. In 2012, they only missed 16 games and they started on Christmas, so there was still some resemblance of normalcy. However, in 99, I believe they started that season in like February, and holy shit, they shoved 50 games into that short amount of time, and then you had the Spurs go on to win the championship. And so this is not a lockout. This is actually a bit more painstaking and complicated than a lockout. But the reason I brought those two up is because it's obviously the only thing comparable that we have to what's going on right now, a stoppage in basketball. So in hindsight, looking back at 2012, nobody really argues that there's an asterisk. When we were closer to that time, people did though. Before LeBron had also got the 2013 Finals MVP and won that championship with the Miami Heat, you even had other NBA players coming out and say, hey, it's only half of a ring. That's actually like a direct quote from Reggie Evans, who at the time I believe played for the Nets. And yeah, he tried to devalue the championship and LeBron's ring by saying they won it in a lockout year, so it's only half a ring. So when we were closer to that time, people argued things like, hey, there were a lot of injuries, people were out of shape because they came into that season out of shape, no one knew when it was starting, so everyone wasn't really on a level playing field as if you just came into a season and you were preparing for a target date. Then of course there was the matter of the 3 games in 3 nights with injuries and exhaustion. So those were just some of the arguments back then. I'm not arguing the validity of these, I'm just telling you what people said around that time before the Miami Heat went back to back. Now they go on and make it back to the NBA Finals, they win an improbable title against a very good Spurs team, and of course no one can say anything. They've done it twice, they had an amazing season that year, so any talk of like a fluke, that was all shut down, and I don't really think you've heard any legitimate asterisk talk since then. But we can all agree here that we understand how NBA talk works, right? And we know how NBA fans work, and we know how NBA media works. We know how narratives work. And so I can pretty much guarantee that if the Heat had gone on to lose to the Spurs in 2013, the way it looked like they were doing, that 2012 title would be looked at with a lot more scrutiny. Because at this point, a lot of people have just forgotten or really never took the time to go learn that there was a lockout. But I can hear those narratives now if they had gone on to lose in 2013 and never win, that damn, this great team came together and their one ring was in a lockout shortened season. I just know that would be a talking point. That would be a buzz phrase. Now again, not arguing the validity, I personally love starting the season on Christmas, and again, 16 missed games, it wasn't terrible. However, 1999 lockout shortened season, they played 50 games. They started in February. Do you ever hear anyone talk about the Spurs 1999 title aside from it being Tim Duncan's first? You rarely ever hear about that, right? It's because as far as I can tell, no one really cares about it, A, and also also be the Spurs did go on to win 4 more titles behind Tim Duncan, so even if anyone cared to really go back and slander the 1999 title, there's not much you can say. They backed it up, just like how the Heat backed it up by going back to back. So 99 isn't talked about as much, but again, what if it was looked at as a fluke title? What if that had been Tim Duncan's only title? What if that had been David Robinson's only title? How would it be looked at then? And even with that, with people not really going back to 99 as much, there still have been people that said that title has an asterisk, including Shaquille O'Neal. A direct quote from Shaq himself says, "I would tell Mr. Duncan to his face, you have 4 rings. It says you have 5, but the asterisks don't count. It's not a real season. I'll tell all of San Antonio to its face, you only have 4. Now, of course, Shaq went head to head with Duncan a lot. He might be maybe a little bit salty there. I don't know why. The Lakers routinely beat the Spurs, but Shaq's always competitive like that, bit of a dick sometimes. But I bring up his talking point because I believe a lot of NBA media and a lot of NBA fans are like him and are going to be like him as it pertains to this season. Now, before I actually get to this season, I want to say that I don't care about an asterisk. At this point, knowing what the 2021 season is probably going to be like because of the virus, let's just get some basketball back. Let's just learn how to really, play with this for a while. And I also totally agree that whatever narratives are going to be said or asterisk this or whatever could possibly happen, right? The NBA obviously should not base them coming back on what people would say or could say. Who gives a shit? And lastly, given the teams that could win the championship this year, for the most part, I'm going to say there really isn't going to be an asterisk in the long term because I lived through the Miami Heat championship in 2012 and I literally lived through the narrative going from, oh, that ring doesn't really count, to in 2020 having somebody say that was never actually a narrative when I know it was. I used to see this shit. But the Heat repeated and time has washed over it, just as time washes over absolutely everything. Time washes over injuries, narratives. That's why I used to say, when you remember we were living through the Warriors dynasty, I always said, no matter how many years it takes, if it takes 30, 40 years, all people are going to see in the history books is that the Warriors had a hell of a run. Durant's move will always be remembered, but as you get further and further away, a lot of the narratives we live with today, they're going to lose their strength. And so as it pertains to the ending of the upcoming season, you have multiple sides developing already. One comes from someone like Austin Rivers, who's actually a player, and his stance is that this is actually, it should be the most respected title because of how hard it's going to be to win now. He argues that, look, the season stopped mid-form. It stopped dead in its tracks. It was like a train going, it was like a bullet train that came to a dead stop. And so now when they restart, it's going to be very close to the playoffs. It's probably going to go as quickly as it can to the playoffs. We'll probably only finish with like 70 games. That's what it looks like they're trying to hit right now because of TV contracts. And then somebody's going to have to win a championship. And we don't know how they're going to do the playoffs yet, but somebody's going to have to come together. The team chemistry and camaraderie is going to have to come back. People are going to have to get into playoff shape really quick. All these factors that are going to be more difficult than they have really ever been. You got to remember, for a lot of people, the regular season is just practice. They use the regular season to get into playoff shape, a la Kawhi Leonard, one of the best in the game. So from an Austin Rivers perspective, whoever wins this title, they should actually get more respect than a regular winner. I see exactly where he's coming from. I don't think that is what most people are going to look at it as at the start though. I think a lot of fans are going to look at this and go, okay, there's no crowds, everyone's at a neutral site. So right off the bat, one of the biggest things in playoff basketball, home court advantage does not exist. There's teams out there that play all season so they can have home court advantage for as long as possible in the playoffs. One of the things that made the Cavaliers 2016 championship so special was that they came back from 3-1 without home court advantage. They had to play game 7 in Roaracle, in a place that the Warriors had barely lost that entire year. That was thought to be the impossible and they did it. That's what adds to the lore. LeBron's game 6 in Boston, again, they were down 2-3. The Celtics had all the momentum. Aside from how legendary he was on the court, it was the fact that he went into the opposing team's village. He went into the dungeon. He went into the jungle and did that. He had to get that shit out the mud. So you see where I'm going with this. People are going to look back and say a very important part of playoff basketball wasn't there. Now, again, we don't have a clue when that's coming back. We don't know when we're going to be able to have crowded sporting events again. Even if we have fans, we don't know when we're going to have full arenas again. That's why I say I don't care about any of this, because these are problems that we're going to have to live with for a while. So at the moment, we're just doing the best we can. Now, how we're going to look back at that title in hindsight, because we just had to do the best we could, that's why I'm looking at NBA fans and NBA media. How are they going to remember this? Probably with an asterisk, especially if and when we return to normalcy. This isn't going to be looked at as like a real season. What about what I talked about earlier, where players use the regular season to play themselves into shape? A lot of superstars do that. A lot of players do that. Hell, we literally have something called playoff LeBron. We know that in the regular season he puts up amazing numbers, but a lot of the reason people say he doesn't win MVP every year is because he's pacing himself. He's playing great, but we know that there's a playoff mode to come with that. So how different is that now when he was probably playing himself into that mode? He was playing great this year, by the way, obviously, as he always does, but the season comes to a dead stop, so it's impossible to be where he was before. I'm sure he's been training, and I'm sure all the players have been training, but it is impossible to be in game shape with no games, or in true game shape at your peak. And so you come back, you play a few more games, and you go straight into playoff basketball. That's just, I think that's more ammo for the Asterisk crowd. I really do. I think people are going to look back and say, hey, there was a stoppage. Guys came back, the league rushed into the playoffs. Dudes were rusty. I really think that's how this is going to be remembered for a while. And finally, I do agree partly that this comes down to who ends up winning the title. Not as cynical as Twitter puts it, because a lot of Twitter right now is just waving it off as, oh, y'all are just going to wait to see who wins before you say there's an asterisk. In other words, they're saying, like, if LeBron wins his fourth, you'll put an asterisk, and if somebody you like wins it, then you won't put one. I actually think it's more like, if Kawhi Leonard wins the title this year or LeBron wins the title, those guys are proven champions already. Kawhi's got 2, he's got 1 as the best player on his team, LeBron's got 3 as the best player on his team. So if they win the championship, it's not like it was that far out of reach for them to win anyways. However, imagine Giannis's first title coming now. There is no way. The reason that I think NBA fans are, my honest opinion is that people who say that there's just not going to be an asterisk at all because everything is the same, all factors are the same, I think they just want basketball back. I think we're all desperate for basketball, and we're trying to move past this conversation and just push it to the side and say, no, there's not going to be an asterisk, let's just go. I think people just really miss basketball and they want it back. But there is absolutely no way, I don't believe in any way that if Giannis won his first ring this year, people aren't going to be looking at this in a year or two if he doesn't have another one and going, yeah, he won a title that year they played at Disney, but he's got to get one to solidify that. Now, of course, years and years down the road, all we might see is Giannis, NBA champion, finals MVP. Years and years and years later, and then, of course, narratives disappear, time washes away all wounds. But just in the era that we're living in, I can totally see that. Giannis's first championship comes in a very ratchet season. It's not a great look. It's not an amazing look. What about if a team, a dark horse team ends up winning it, right? Because right now, we've all looked at this and gone, it seems like most people have decided the Bucks, Lakers, and Clippers, one of those 3 teams is where we expect the championship to come from. But what if it ends up being a team that wasn't doing good before the stoppage, or wasn't doing great? What if the Sixers come out of the blue and they're NBA champions? What if the Celtics hoist banner 18? They were great, but nobody was like, yeah, we expect a title from them this year. Hell, what if the Jazz, who were a dark horse team at the beginning of the year, what if this is the year they win their first franchise title? Those are teams that I don't think are very likely to duplicate anytime soon. I don't think they're likely to repeat. So if it happens for one of them, I can definitely see people looking at this, especially years later, after years have gone by and they haven't duplicated it. I can totally see people going, yeah, they won a title, but did they really win a title? I can see that. I can see Lakers fans right now, if the Clippers win this year, going, yeah, well, first of all, we have 16 more than you guys, and second of all, you didn't win a legitimate title. Oh God, I can see that. The Clippers' first title after all the shit they've been through, the Clippers' first title coming this year, I can already see the narratives. They are writing themselves. And of course, I said, like, guys like Kawhi and LeBron, they are already champions, and we would expect them to be champions anyways, but oh, you can best believe with the amount of LeBron haters that they are, that if his 4th title, especially in his quest to become the GOAT and chasing Jordan and all this stuff, if his 4th title comes right now, oh, you can guarantee the narratives are going to be endless. So just so it can be plain and in stone, I don't care about an asterisk. Again, the world right now seems irreversibly changed in a lot of ways, and sports right now seems changed for like the foreseeable future. So I don't care what people are gonna say, because for all we know, the next title could really be something similar to this. And B, now that I see where we are, I completely disagree with Shaq, because he thinks that there's going to be an asterisk and that's the reason why we should just go ahead and shut this season down. And I just don't think that because of what a bunch of media and fans are gonna say that we should stop a season, especially not with the repercussions of that, with the money that's involved, with the contracts, how that would affect the cap next season. I mean, things are already going to be affected with the fact that we can't have fans for a while, so there's no way some bullshit basketball talk should dictate what we actually do. So that's where I stand, but I'm also telling you that the people that are saying, oh, because everyone's playing under the same conditions, this, that, and the other thing, there will be no asterisk, I think they're giving NBA fans and media way too much credit. Like, I wake up this morning and on Twitter they're talking about the NBA is potentially saying, okay, how about this year we experiment, since everyone's going to be in a neutral site. Experiment. There may be experimenting with a play-in tournament, experiment. There may be experimenting with the 1 through 16 playoff format because now travel is not an excuse. I actually think that one is the most likely to happen if there is experimentation. I could totally see that because that was the biggest hurdle. As a matter of fact, that was really the only hurdle. There really might be 1 through 16 seeding, but I think they would do it by the 8 teams in each conference. I don't think they would do like best 1 through 16 in the NBA. I don't think they're going to do that because I think that would take some people out of the playoffs that are currently in. But just imagine that this is the year that they experimented with a play-in of some sort, or something changed, and then next year we go back to normal. There's no way that people are just going to look at this and just say, yep, that's legit. I think it'll be a while before we get to that point where we look back in the record books and whoever was a champion, and it's just there, and there's no narratives. But I think this will be a disputed title for a really long time, almost regardless of who wins it. But that's also why we should just keep going, because damned if we do, damned if we don't. If we don't have a champion this year, then all this just went to waste, lost a lot of money, yada yada. We do go, then people, narratives, dispute a title. Man, we're just doing the best we can, whatever. So let me know what you think about this in the comment section and description. Who do you think is actually going to win when we come back? Because if we don't have a lot of unforeseen obstacles, it looks like we will be back in about a little bit over a month, and that would be nice. Make sure to hit the like button, comment, and sub if you enjoyed, and hit the bell next to my name if you want notifications every time a new video drops. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.